100 million things I thought I could tell this and this. So yeah, this is a little bit of a lot of things that went on in the last 8 months. Yeah, hopefully if you've got some questions you can ask me at the end. So I think a little bit about when the journey began. So it definitely wasn't just when I hopped on the plane in February to go to Germany, and I think it actually went back further than these pictures to when I was a gymnast, and so I grew up as a competitive gymnast. And when I finished gymnastics, I was really lucky. I chose to stop the sport. I wasn't injured or anything like that, and I was pleased with where I thought I'd achieved my goals. But I made a little promise in my head that I was going to take another sport to the top. Then I went to university and I started studying sports sociology, and I got completely put off elite sport because I looked at it with a very critical eye. But when I got my road bike in Dunedin, I still hung on to those thoughts and have a critical eye on elite sport, but it was just so thrilling. I think that I decided that I would give it a go. So this is where it began. One of my first big races was around Kobo, and that was in 2011. That's us with the pink shirts on there. And riding around that lake, I had this, it was like an epiphany of gratitude. Might sound funny, but I was riding around and all of a sudden I just got this feeling that I'm so lucky that I've got these arms and these legs and this healthy heart. And we were riding for raising funds for people with breast cancer as well, and I thought, I'm so lucky to have this body, what can I do with it? And there was this, beautiful outlook in the mountain. I thought, oh, this is great. And the next race was the race. So of course, as I'm going up the hills, not sure if I was thinking just how lucky I was to have a good healthy heart, because it probably didn't feel that healthy, but I was looking out over the peninsula and thinking, wow, this is just awesome. And the views, and I felt so lucky to be able to get where I was on a bicycle and see these things that some people are not able to see because of certain restrictions or barriers that they face. And you'll notice this kit keeps reappearing. That was my first ever matching cycle kit. The University of Otago cycling kit, and this is my very good friend Andrew, who used to take me out and drag me around the hills in Dunedin, and this week's been dragging me around the Port Hills again. Just need to get a bit fitter so I can beat him again. So I think that's where it started, on the hills in Dunedin, and then in Kopo and at the race here in Christchurch. And this was, fast forward from the race about experience of riding with a friend, I wanted to do it again. So that was February 2012, so last year. And fast forward a year later, February 2013, after a year of training and racing, getting a bit more experience in New Zealand, I made it to Europe. And this was after a big long flight, and I'm quite proud of the fact that I got the train from Frankfurt to Erfurt, which was like a 2.5-hour train ride, and got off at the right place with all my bags, no bike. And this was my team director who greeted me there, and it was very, very cold. That's why I have a hat and scarf and coat on. March was kicked off with a training camp in Italy, in Toscana. So that was kind of just like every day I woke up going, oh my goodness. Because as you can see, we had a team car and matching kit and matching bikes, and it was all very exciting. And photo shoots on the beach, even though we're not really looking like we're riding there with our helmets. Unfortunately, it rained a lot, and we ended up running more than cycling, as you can see on the beach there. And one of the challenges of this for me was that we weren't allowed to ride because it was raining, and you guys will know that you can still train in the rain, can't you? Especially with the icebreaker and lovely woolen things that we had here to keep us warm. So I was very frustrated for a week of not being able to ride my bike, even though I was in this riding paradise, as you can see, with mountains there. But it was really awesome meeting the girls, even though I couldn't understand a word at all at our dinner table. But I had lots of time to appreciate the food because I couldn't do much talking. And this is where I think I learned quite a lot about how we can perhaps structure our eating. And what we had here was buffet of vegetables and salads every night. So we stayed in a hotel for this training camp. And we'd have, well I would have, about 2 bowls of vegetables first of all. So we started off with the vegetables, so sort of filling up on salads and veggies. And then out came course number 1, I guess, which would be a plate of pasta. The most delectable pasta I've ever eaten in my life. It put my pre-race pasta cups to shame, definitely. And then there'd be a full plate of meat come out after that. And then there'd also be dessert. Didn't pay for the dessert, sorry. And that was, very, very tasty pizza. So we were living like kings but not training so much, which was a bit difficult. And every day there was cake at breakfast, at our sort of mid-afternoon snack, and then dessert again at dinner. So I thought, okay, well, eating pudding 3 times a day might not go so well for the rest of the season. So I put into practice our little savour the flavour trick, which some of you might have read on my tips throughout the year, and just ended up trying like a small piece of each. So I didn't feel like I was missing out on all these new flavours, but I was quite satisfied with just having a taste and finding out what it was like. Then it was back to April in Germany, which is supposedly spring, and this year, this photo was arriving at a little spring festival at a bike shop, but it had been -5 on that ride, and that was my first ever bratwurst, the sausage there. And also my first ever training companion, Billy, who I was really, really excited to meet one day. I was out riding in the snow, and I just thought that no other cyclists existed in Germany. And then I came across this fellow, and we ended up training together the next day, which was really cool. And that's some of my favourite memories from the year, the people I met out riding like that, which is really cool. So at the end of April we had our first tour, which was in Cottbus, and you might not be able to see here, but this is snow. And I'll never forget when I was warming up for the criterium, they were sweeping the snow off the streets. I was already quite afraid of criteriums and going around corners fast. And then they were sweeping snow off the street, and I thought, oh my goodness. And that was definitely a very challenging experience, racing in those conditions. And it was so cold that in the time trial, I couldn't feel my legs. And I'm sure all of you know that in time trial, pretty much all you can feel is those legs really, really burning. I was sort of looking at them. I couldn't work out if I was riding really, really slowly or if they were numb. But yes, that was an interesting experience riding in the snow. And I'll share another, I don't know if I was going to tell you about this, but since there's not many here, it's a bit of a secret. But I don't know if any of you have been to Europe, but they're very open about pretty much nakedness. And this was a tour with the senior men, just to get us sort of fit and ready before we started racing with the women in May. And at the end of our race, the girls all go off to the showers, and I was following them along, and I walk in and realise that we had to shower with the Masters men. So that was a very challenging tour all in all. And then they started speaking to me in German, and I was just completely so that was challenging April. And then we get to May, which was probably this was my favourite tour of the year, the first one that we did in the Czech Republic. This was awesome for a number of reasons, mainly because I had no idea how I was going to go. I just didn't have any idea, but I knew that I didn't want to be out the back. And I was petrified. There was 170 starters, and in New Zealand my biggest race was probably 30, so it was a wee bit different from sort of 2 abreast, rotating on the front to just being in a sea of riders. I knew it was going to be like that, and I kind of had a bit of a word to myself before we started saying, look, Reta, you didn't come over here to be out the back in your first race. And I wanted this state that was awesome, where I was just knew that I had to go forward, and at the start it was very, very scary, lots of roundabouts and everyone was just charging, but it was kind of that sense of invincibility, which has been hard to find again since then. But hopefully you guys have found that at one point in your racing, or maybe it's still to come that sense that you're really just going forward and nothing can stop you. So that was really exciting in the first stage. This was the end of the first stage. It was a hill, I'll never forget it. It was cobbled, and it just kept going up and round corners, and surprisingly with the more up and then cobbles at the end. And a girl in front of me actually came to a standstill and toppled off her bike. And yeah, it's interesting technique there. Top, not that great. But it was one of those races when you finish at the top completely spent and you just thought, wow, like, I feel awesome, because it was just so challenging. And this is another stage that finished up the top of a very steep hill. And at that stage, people tried to sort of help you by getting, because it finished still going up, a bit of a push. And I remember a guy pushed me and I just went dunk into the grass. And then girls fell on top of me and I was just trying to unflip my foot. And I'm looking around for my team director there. And he's just a photo of the peloton zipping along, and then the convoy of cars behind, which is kind of overwhelming when you see how many vehicles are following. One of the best things about this tour was getting the polka dot KOM jersey on one stage, and this photo was just after my teammate sat on the front and just rode her heart out for the first half of the hill, and then allowing me to attack with fresh legs just before the top. And then there's a line there, and I made it across first, so that secured me some points, and there was another climb later in the day. And that was a really cool feeling, and one of the best memories from my year was seeing my team director after that. We still didn't speak much to each other because of the language barrier, and he just says, "You can see the joy in my smile," and that was cool, just giving him some pleasure because he'd done so much for us during that tour. And then getting the polka dot jersey, which was quite funny because I was just excited about climbing the hills and things, and then there was people asking for autographs, and that was just hilarious, all these guys out there on their weekend training rides. And the best thing is that you get to start in the front row where you have a jersey, and that's really, really cool because it means you can warm up for longer, and you don't have to sit and nudge everyone and try and get for like the racing starts like 10 minutes before the actual gun, because everyone's like elbowing each other trying to get forward to the start of the line. So this was probably the coolest thing, just being able to rock up 2 minutes before. And when I go like this, and he's I'm nervous, so I'm very nervous there, fidgeting next to some big guns next to me. And that was the tastiest treat. I baked that for my teammates, and little like cupcakes. And June was quite a busy month. We went on to Austria. One of the challenging things from this was a 10-hour car journey to Austria, and then we raced 100k that afternoon. Now last year, I picked up a stink about driving 2.5 hours from Dunedin to Timaru before a race, and I decided I would get myself there the night before and go without the team. So 10 hours before 100k was an interesting experience, and I didn't really find my legs that afternoon, unfortunately, and was pretty disappointed with my performance. And the next day, this is stage 2, was a 12-kilometre hill climb, and I thought, right, this is me, I'm going to take the stage. And I've never felt, you know how you hear athletes sometimes on the TV or something, say, oh, I just didn't have the legs today. And I thought, what do you mean you didn't have the legs? Like, you trained for this event, you should have the legs. That was one of those days, the first day I think I realised that you can't always be on top of your game every single day, which was a pretty hard pill to swallow. And I didn't, you can see I'm at the back of too much like that. It's not the back of the field, but the back of the break. And then I finally found my legs on the third stage, and I was away on a break with this lady she's also from Germany, Easter, and that was a really cool feeling. I just felt like myself again, and I much prefer being out alone on the bike with just a couple of other people around me than a peloton like that. So there was definitely challenges of a different feeling on the bike that I hadn't had before, of just not being able to make my body work at this tour in Austria. And then we moved on to Wangen, which is this beautiful little town here, for the National Time Trial Championships. That was special because I kind of overcame some time trial demons, which I'd had in Austria, where I found myself the whole time just beating myself up. And when the horn honked in the car behind me, I sort of took it as a negative, you're not going fast enough, speed up, rather than a, come on, you're almost there, dig it in. And so I kind of, at the end of that time trial, had feared doing another one. Actually talked to Richard before this time trial, he had some great tips for mental toughness. And I ended up really enjoying the TT, which was pretty cool to get to the end of it. And I wasn't actually worried about the result, I just had fun, which was really nice. Because I can get a bit caught up in the results sometimes, put a bit much pressure on myself. And there is that figure from the break in the previous slide, actually. She won that TT. Then it was July, which was another busy time for tours. This is again back in the Czech Republic. For our tours, we have a washing machine in our team bed because everybody stays in the same hotel, and so not everyone can do their washing. So we've got it set up in there, and then the water flows out. It's all very cool. And our team director, bless him, works around the clock cleaning and shining our bikes after every stage. That's the 2 cups of coffee you can see there. He does have quite a lot of shit in him as well, but I never went onto the nutrition topic with him. And I like this photo because that's the Australian national team. And I was like, I'm going to take you going at the front with them. Then between this tour, that tour in the Czech Republic, had a week of recovery time in Berlin. Really lucky to visit my best friend who was studying over there. And so I did some good eating, which we found a little Thai market in the Berlin park, which was really cool because there was all these people out in the park, all these little umbrellas, people selling Thai food and bikes, because everybody goes by bike all over Germany really. That was a really, really awesome kebab, which I think was about €2. The food was really cheap in Berlin. And this is me trying to be a sensible cyclist but also a tourist, which didn't go so well. I think I did a bit much walking, and I wasn't sitting down as much as I should have been that week, and I let my hardly sit of recovery. Then, after Berlin, it was another tour in Germany. This was kind of like my home tour for the year, if there was to be one, for the Tourenrundfahrt. And this is a really, really steep hill with cobbles, which was named after a German cyclist who's still riding at the moment actually. That was probably the most epic moment of the tour. Going up, you come around the corner and then there's a wall with cobbles. That was really cool. And I was looking at photos just this morning, and I saw this one, I thought, my goodness, I never realised there were that many people there watching us. So it's funny the things that you don't see when you're out riding. I definitely took notice of all the buildings, but I didn't quite notice the crowds. So get a bit in my zone sometimes on the start line. This was a really challenging tour, partly because of the heat. When I arrived in spring and it was -5, I told myself I would never complain about the heat once it finally got warmer. This was over 30 degrees every day, 5 days of racing, and I probably did complain once or twice about how hot it was. Something that made this tour special was the people we had out supporting us, who I'd sort of met along the way when we were promoting the tour, because it was a home tour for us in Turin where I lived. We'd done sort of some promo work in each of the towns where the stages started, and these are some of the guys we met who were out there, and as I said before, it's those people that I seem to remember a lot when I think back as the people I met through riding, so that was really cool having them. They even had a New Zealand flag. August I went to Switzerland. I did a race, but that was okay. The best thing was pretty much, this is another part of my dream, was riding in the mountains of Switzerland. I did learn a pretty good lesson from this though, is that even though it's really, really sunny, when you're climbing up into the mountains, you need to take lots of clothes to ride down, or it's very cold and it's not very enjoyable. I had a backpack on with my bikini because I thought, I'll stop at a lake somewhere, and a little towel, one of those little chamois towels, and I had a vest. And when I was descending, I stopped and I got the towel out and I wrapped it around me underneath my vest as a little bit more of a wind shelter, and I was still very, very cold. So I learned a lesson there, and the next day when I went to a different pass, I was very well prepared. This is another special person that I met and was very lucky to stay with in Switzerland, Jolene Neff. She, as you can see, world champ stripes there. She's actually under 23 world mountain bike champion. And I stayed with her 2 weeks out from her world champs, which was a pretty amazing experience to see how relaxed she was, and I learned a lot from her about the way she approaches her training, and kind of made me reflect a little bit about how you need to remember that it should first and foremost be fun and not so serious. She rode at the World Champs on the road as well, and did really well. So yeah, really special person, and beautiful view of a lake, which is very exciting after being rather water deprived in Germany. This was some Swiss food with lots of cheese. You can see this little raclette dish, and you put the cheese on there and melt it, and then you scrape it off over all sorts of delicious things like bacon and corn, and I think we had sun-dried tomatoes. So I definitely got into the Swiss cuisine there, and that was one of the things I learnt over there actually, was to become a little bit more relaxed about my nutrition. I just wanted to try everything when I was over there, and especially when you're in a hotel in the Czech Republic in a tour, you don't always get the things that you're used to eating before a tour, so sometimes it was just potatoes, and some lettuce if you could find some, so I found a bit of vegetables to try. Oh wow, okay. And then after that, it was the World Champs. There was a little bit of time in between Switzerland and the World Champs, and one of the things that was probably challenging is that I didn't find out if I was going to be riding until 3 weeks before. So I was pretty much finished my racing for the season and just waiting to know. And if I thought, if I'm not going, I'm going to pack my bags and go travelling for a month. So there was a bit of a tough week in there, and yeah, when I found out, it was pretty exciting, because the whole year that was really what was driving me, and I had my New Zealand top sort of sitting in my room, and I I used to go out and train it, and then I stopped wearing it. I was like, I'm not going to wear it again until I get selected. So the first training ride I did, I put it on and went for a good ride in the hills, which was pretty awesome. Yeah, the first thing that sticks in my mind was that it was just really great to be back again amongst Kiwis when I got to Italy. So this is just out of Florence, and the CEO of Bike and Z, who I'd been emailing sort of like kind regards Reta, all building up to the selection and telling him my results and trying to encourage him to select me. He picked me up from the airport in stubbies and a singlet, and g'day Reta, and genders. So that was really cool, and I sort of felt this big lift in energy once I got back amongst New Zealanders, and that probably comes back to one of the main things I think I learnt this year was that identity and having a sense of identity and who you are is really, really important, and I possibly lost that at a few places through the year, and coming back amongst New Zealanders really, really lifted my energy levels, and I thought, this is why I'm riding, because I wanted to ride with the firm. So that was pretty cool. And here's our team now. This is on the start line. It's quite surprising that I'm smiling, because usually I was a little bit more serious, but I'd been very sick the day before this race, and it wasn't ideal by any means, but I think it actually helped me to relax a little bit going into the race, and I just thought, what the hell, no pressure, I'm just going to do everything that I can, which I would have anyway, but it was a little bit less stressful. There's our team -1, who's actually ahead of us, riding together in the peloton. I was quite proud that I managed to stick by my team for the first 50 kilometres as instructed, because one of the challenges for me through the year had been holding my place in that sea of cyclists. So that was really cool. That was definitely a positive I took out of the race. And here's my team at the end, bit battered and bruised. One of my teammates unfortunately crashed on some oil, Emily, in training during the week, and was concussed, so she finished the race early because her head was spinning, feeling dizzy. But Linda, she came 6th in the world in the road race after coming 2nd in the TT earlier in the week. And that was really, really cool just to see her up there without a lot of support from her teammates. I learnt a lot from Linda as well, and that she was quite a relaxed person going into the races, so definitely seeing how different people approach things throughout the year. Another pretty special thing about Worlds was that I had my brother and my mum. So this is my brother, and this is my mum. So that's on one of the hills in the circuit, and every lap I actually could see them and hear them definitely. And it was just really, really special to have them there, and comes back to probably the second biggest thing I think that I've learned from the year. The first one I said about sort of identity and knowing who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And this one was about people. And it was thrown into a completely different situation over there, not being able to communicate very well with the language barrier. But I definitely met a lot of special people along the way. Some that I couldn't express myself to as I would in New Zealand, but I still formed quite a deep relationship with them. But I also missed my friends terribly, even with Skype and things like that. It's not the same as sort of coming home to your flatmates at the end of the day and sharing your day with them. I've got sort of a favourite proverb, I think, which sums up that lesson, which is He aha te nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, which is what is the most important thing in the world. It's people, it's people, it's people. And sometimes I found I got too absorbed in what I was doing, and then to sit back and think about all the other people around you as well. So pretty cool to have mum and my brother there. And that was the end of the race with my mum. Very, very cool. And then one thing that I'm really grateful for is I had time to explore the area where I was riding at the World Champs. Sort of the land and what I see is really important to me when I'm riding, and I mentioned that right back at the start with doing the race and seeing the views. And one challenge this year was that we'd often, like when we went to Austria, 10 hours in the car, race your bikes for 3 days, get in the car and drive 10 hours back to Germany. And I think, where was I? I was in Austria, had some Austrian wine that I won, but not a lot of pictures from where I'd been riding. So I was really grateful to be able to spend some time in Italy afterwards and see where we had been riding, and that's my brother. Yeah. And of course I did lots of eating. So this was the team dinner after the race. At the top there was our appetizer plate. I didn't really have much room for the pizza here. And then one of my favourite things from Italy was this tiramisu. It looks like I'm browning, but really I'm just going and savouring the flavour. This is a cappuccino here from the Cappuccino King, who's an 83-year-old man just out of Florence who runs this cafe and has a scrapbook of all the cyclists that have stopped in. And there's some very famous names and jerseys on the wall at that cafe. So that was pretty cool. And this is Italian family style, so we found a French pasta making, made our own Italian, my mum, my brother and I, at the end of the trip. So lots of good eating there. And this was my second night back in New Zealand, out at O'Kane's Bay, kind of like a full circle, out on the peninsula where I did that all inspiration of the race. And I think coming back and looking at those, some of the hills to the race, I just felt grateful again for all that I experienced, but I think even more so for what we have here in New Zealand, the places we can ride, the places that we can see, and I was just really happy to be amongst my friends again. And yeah, here I am at a complete performance with you guys, which is also very exciting. What's next, you're probably wondering. I'm also doing a little bit of wondering about that myself. But in 2007, I did a gap year in Scotland, and I worked in a prep school, and I made very good friends with the children and the teachers, and they always said, when are you going to come back, Reta? And I said, I'll come back in 2014 to watch the Commonwealth Games. I'd love to do that. I'll watch the gymnastics. I hadn't started cycling then. So I actually went back to Scotland briefly after Italy before I came home and visited those friends that I made again, and told them that hopefully I will be coming back to the Commonwealth Games, but I should be on the bike rather than watching. So I think, that's the next step for me, is July next year in Glasgow. And that's it. 8 months and 30 minutes. Does anyone have any questions or anything? Alright, let's go right on then.